And welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Time for Opinion Court. Please do get in touch with us. 22422 is our SMS line. You can use the hashtag Opinion Court on social media so that we can track your feedback. We're discussing corruption and in particular Raila Odinga's response to President Uhuru Kenyatta concerning his claim that he has done all he can to fight graft. I'll introduce my panel to you, then we'll listen to what the former Prime Minister had to say, and then we'll talk. So to my immediate right is Harun Dubi, who is a renowned lawyer and human rights activist. Next to him is Edward Kisiangani, our resident political analyst. And to my left is Nduko Omatigere, who is a citizen engagement specialist and human rights activist. Gentlemen, you're all welcome to the program. Let's listen to what Raila had to say, and then we'll talk.
And what do you want us to do now that you have said you will do no more? What do you want Kenyans to do? Is this going to be a free-for-all now? Mr. President, you made promises to Kenyans in your manifesto on how you would fight corruption. You made a total of 38 pledges to Kenyans. Now you have said you have done your part and will do no more, though you have not delivered on any of those pledges. Were these pledges just plain lies? Were you making false promises just to get to power? And what do you want us to do now that you have said you will do no more?
There's poignant questions from the former Prime Minister. Prof, I want to start with you to the extent that after the President made his statement basically saying that he has empowered agencies that are mandated to fight graft with every resource that they could possibly ask for, and that there was nothing more for him to do, or at least he asked the audience, then what more do you want me to do? And there really wasn't a forthcoming response to that. Is it equal to an admission that his administration has failed to fight graft?
I think, and thank you very much, and a happy Mashujaa Day.
And to you.
Yeah, I think when you look at what the President said, it actually confirms that he has exhausted his options to fight corruption. Sadly, actually, it's an admission that what you want me to do is a statement you hear from people who have now said, I have tried all my time to, like a doctor, to save life, but the patient had to die. So what do you want me to do? I'm only human. That is what the President is saying. But after he has said that, and so Raila Odinga from a political perspective is saying that the palace is immobilized and is full of people who cannot perform their duties. Now, in this situation, I think, Anne, we must contextualize it. The current political dispensation which we practice in Kenya results from the work of John Locke. In fact, our own constitution is Lockean. It's Lockean in the sense that it says that it assumes that in the state of nature, the pre-government society, before there was government, people were killing themselves, they were trampling on others' rights. There was total insecurity, and it was anarchy, one against all and all against one. So they ended a contract with what now has come to be known as modern government. And that contract therefore was that you protect our natural rights, our right to life, our right to happiness and liberty, and you do that, and these rights have been expanded in our constitution between Article 19 and 57 to say that these are the rights to protect. One of the rights is that we know that corruption hits directly at the rights of very many citizens. Now, that contract is what we ended with the President of the Republic of Kenya. We have entered the contract. He promised that he will obey that contract. Now, if now he's saying he's unable to carry his side of the contract, although he's claiming his side is already done, but he heads a government because we entered a contract with this government, and he announces what you want me to do, he has already disqualified himself from the second term That is what he's saying. That don't give me this responsibility because I'm not going to act.
Because if you're electing me to fight corruption, I can't do it.
So if that is the objective of you electing me next year to fight corruption, stop it. Now, what I would have expected, because before I go to my brother, is that I would have expected that when he was speaking at the summit at State House, the president, when he said that he made sure that he addressed each of the fellows that are heading the national institutions. And he's telling them, you have failed WAGO, you have failed Director of Investigations, you have failed Judge. In civilized societies, he was telling them, please, you have been part of my team and you have let me down. These guys should have resigned the following day. And if they don't resign, we expect the head of state, if he wants to get back the confidence of the people of Kenya, to now tell them that I have announced to the public that you have failed us and you have been earning salaries. Now, tomorrow, step down or we initiate impeachment proceedings against you. That is the right thing to do.
Is it for... Do you think that... Because basically, if I was just to follow up on what you've said, Prof, is that he has no confidence in the holders of these offices that are supposed to, you know, execute the war on graft, etc. And he says he's given them resources, etc. Is the onus on the public to bring a petition forward so the president can study it and dismiss it?
No. I think picking from where Prof has stopped, and I agree with him largely, is that the president was saying, I have resigned. I am unable to keep the promise I made. Because Kenyans did not go to the poll in 2013 to elect Paul Kihara or Wako or any of
these independent officers.
Yes. They elected the president because he said, I'm going to deal decisively with corruption in this country. Then he came to us and told us, I am unable to do it because the lieutenants have chosen are unable to do it. So effectively, you should have said, in decent societies, I am resigning.
And in your own estimation, because you are a lawyer and you do handle some of these cases, do you believe that there has been a failure of the criminal justice system to the extent that it was pointed out at State House, that the buck really has been put at the judiciary to give the convictions and they're not doing so?
No. I think that was a misrepresentation of the facts and a misrepresentation of the law. Because let's look at this. First, we need to examine the different levels of how corruption works. There is the corruption that happens institutionally and structurally. Parliament enacts law that either facilitates corruption or fails to tame corruption. Then the executive, which is the biggest procurer, and we have been losing a lot of our money through procurement, is the one that through its systems that we lose a lot of money and influence is peddled. The judiciary is the lowest level because a judge, in the context of our adversarial system, sits to wait and hear the evidence from the accuser and an accused. So to blame the judiciary, I think, is lame, lazy, and intellectually dishonest. To say that the judiciary has failed to do anything. The judiciary has not failed to do anything. It is the investigator, first the detector, who detects. We've been seeing this, and when I talk about this, you need to see the interconnectivity between the various institutions and the laws. We have the EACC established in a very, with a very weak linked law, creates an institution that's supposed to be investigating. We have seen them dramatizing investigations. On the first day you hear a whiff of something, you are seeing TV cameras, you guys are invited always to watch the drama of arresting who and who. Then the investigation slightly dies. Then the people are brought to court. Once they are in court, the DPP will say, I'm charging them, or he will say, I want additional evidence.
That's at the detection level, you think?
Detection level. And then when they come to court, the evidence they bring usually is so weak that the court, an impartial court, listening to the case, would have to release the accused person and say, there is no case against you.
And so then you would agree that there is a failure within the criminal justice system
it is not just the criminal justice system. I think it's deeper than you are saying. The failure is within the structural framework. In fact, when the president was talking at those heads of institutions who were before him, I asked myself, when he appointed or when he retained Githu Muigai as the Attorney General, in the context of fighting corruption, what did he expect Githu Muigai to do in terms of enactment of law to ensure that corruption is fought effectively? For instance, the laws relating to companies and immunities and corporations. There is no provision that has been amended to ensure that there is disclosure who the beneficiary of any interest is. So you find companies being mentioned, some shell names. When you go to the registrar's office, you can't find who those are, and you are told there is company A and B which seemed to have bid for this contract. They got the money, and we don't know where they are. The point I'm making is this: the president is, and I say this with all humility, was making a lazy excuse at the country when he is blaming institutions when there is no evidence of an audit of what he did from the time of 2013 when he was elected, in terms of ensuring, as the head of state and head of government, especially head of government, what did he do to ensure that the institutional legal framework was set right for fighting corruption? There are questions we are raising as to whether we need to have EACC exist as one institution seated somewhere to fight corruption across the country, instead of having systems and frameworks that fight corruption.
All right, let me bring you in, Duko, to that to the conversation, and let's pick up from where Harun has left off. Has there, in fact, not been decisive action, you'd say, from the executive, be it in legislation, as Harun has mentioned, or other structural reform of key institutions that would put in place a framework that could stand a chance in the fight against graft?
My view is, following on the confirmation by the president that there's nothing he can do. It's a confirmation of a number of things, and personally I wasn't surprised, because the president in his campaign, on his campaign platform, never promised the country that he was going to fight corruption. So I think he's been very consistent, and the statement he made the other day is basically for show. For me, it confirms an integrity deficit. If I use the analogy of a firm recruiting personnel, and someone comes with a fraudulent resume and gets consultants to help them make a good pitch during the interview, and then turns out that they cannot do the job. For me, I find that it amounts to an act of fraud. And if we were a monarchy, basically what the president did is abdicate. That when monarchies are not able to do what monarchies are supposed to do, they leave office. But for corruption in Kenya, right from day one at independence, it is a design problem. That we have a state structure that was built on the basis of patronage, that those who dreamt it figured it out. The first years of independence was basically to entrench a system that would make whoever holds state power access public resources, not respect public money, and gang up with people who would sustain such a system.
And I want to go back to, if it is a question of design of how the state was formed or conceptualized, how do you fix it? But let me return you to my question, which is it then in fact true that the presidency has not put in place anything that would help fight graft? You will remember the package of 4 laws that they passed. You will remember the funding, at least, that from the president's speech. He says that he has given all these offices, and he was daring them, Prof, yesterday, 2 days ago, to say, what is it that you lack? What resolve have you lacked? What resources have you lacked in order to be able to fight graft? Is it entirely true that they have done nothing, or are those measures not the right ones?
I think it's deliberate that those measures didn't lead to much. Because if you see a state and government structure that is sustained by corruption, and look at the friends of the president, the people he appoints into office, people who are day in, day out mentioned in scandals. But what is the typical presidential reaction?
Such as?
Of course, there are people who are...
Who's day in, day out mentioned in scandals and
I'm talking about the number 2 in the country, the deputy presidency. Many scandals that emerge, be it on school land, be it on smartphones bought for an international conference in Nairobi, land issues, the number 2 in the country. So you can't have a president who stands on a podium at State House and throws the gauntlet back to Kenyans and asking a question of what do you expect me to do. And remember, Uhuru hasn't done this once. He's done the same thing with the fight against terrorism. He's done that on insecurity. He's now doing it on corruption. In my view, it's an admission that there is failure at one point. The institutions by design were not meant to function, be it the EACC, be it the Office of the Prosecutor. Those institutions were not meant to fight corruption decisively.
I think Anne, he makes an important point which we can still enrich. The fact, look at what happened at State House. The president, you know, in front of the president, a man called Mashari, I think, who was a matatu driver, says that the police have assisted me to break the law, and usually I give them 800 shillings per trip towards Umoja, and they ask me, where do you want to start boarding passengers? Anywhere, even in the middle of the road. And they do that. And that means they block other Kenyans. There could be ambulances taking people to hospital, and the people could die on the road. But now, look at the response of the police commissioner, the Inspector General of Police, that these guys should be arrested. You know, and the president does nothing. I watched and I said, the president will tell him, you must step down or we sack you. The president did nothing. And this guy, Aipoa said, we shall defend him. The guy was talking about the road. Our IG is so naive. Not just to do the job, but to understand basic things. He was saying, you know, this place is rotten. But now, if he cannot respond, that is how he responds about it. He doesn't appreciate the unequal power relations between the giver and the taker. He talked about the taker of the bribe and the giver. The power relations is
neither is clean.
We go back to, I want to mention the idea. I'm pursuing the idea that Trump said. You know, I'm not going to talk about the dirty language, but he said, if you are a star, they let you do it. If you are a policeman in Kenya, they let you do it. So that is the point that we need to engage ourselves in and say, how do we enrich the public, empower the public to the point that our power relationship with the organs of the state are not so unequal as they are, that we keep on talking about money. The president thinks that if you pump in money, you can change things. But there are so many structural things that my brother is talking about which have not been attended to, and I agree, it is deliberate.
That is why I was wondering, I also saw that, I said, a whistleblower, a witness is now being accused.
He should be in the police station.
Who should be in the police station. But I don't want to trivialize this argument to that level of the giver and the taker, because the biggest corruption that has bled this country to near death has not brought us to who is giving whom what. It is about how structures are used, institutions are used to bleed the country without the knowledge of the people, especially where public policy is discussed in government. And you find a guy who is a minister, they decide that now all matatus must have seat belts. Then a week or less than a week before the decision... So
that he can be done to supply the seat belts?
A week or less than a week before the decision is announced to the public, a ship is docked in Mombasa with seat belts brought in by a company associated with his son. Then you say the minister is not responsible. This similar to this NYS thing.
Structured to benefit.
What I'm saying is, Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. The reason I'm putting them together is this: that since they were elected, about 2/3 of the time they have been seen together during public events. But it was specifically conspicuous that, as my brother Nduko says, during this Status Conference on corruption, We did not see William Ruto there unless I have...
no, he wasn't there.
Unless my memory...
And let's not speculate on why he wasn't there.
No, I'm not speculating, but it's important to note that he wasn't. Just that. But the point I'm making is that...
Are you suggesting that that casts aspersions on his commitment to fight graft? Or what, what exactly
let's not go there. Let's ask, why was he not there?
It's a political observation.
Perhaps you may say so, and let's conclude it as that.
Yeah.
The point I'm making is that the government has not come up with specific issues, especially when the Attorney General, who is the chief legal advisor or principal legal advisor to the government under the Constitution, starts to throw excuses and even allows the participation of the judiciary in that conference. I was embarrassed that the president of the Court of Appeal agreed to even attend that meeting.
To discuss corruption? What,
yes.
How does that infringe on separation of powers?
The thing is, the executive, you saw the way the president was talking down on them, almost like dressing them down.
He was directing the judiciary.
The executive is supposed to discuss its policies on its own and say, this is how we're going to do our things, and this is how we must perfect our act and present our cases to court. The judges are supposed to wait for their cases to come. But you saw Judge Paul Kihara almost embarrassed in terms of how he was responding. But I was embarrassed more for him to have attended. Two,
the judiciary should snub the executive to make a point?
Not snub. We must recognize separation of powers. We must appreciate the functions, the core function of the judiciary. This idea of even inviting the Chief Justice and telling him, oh, your predecessor was not attending our meetings.
How does that disrespect the separation of powers?
If you may allow me, if you want to listen, let me be precise and shorter. The core function of the judiciary is to decide on disputes. The government is the biggest disputant, whether as a respondent or as the accuser. So the judiciary should wait for these two contestants, the citizen or another person, and the government or other people to come before it. So when you get the president inviting the Chief Justice or the judiciary to come and make policy decisions on government executive functions, and those policy decisions get to court as a source of dispute, then there's been that is the foundation of corruption, because when Professor Kasangani becomes richer than he is, and Luko here is less richer than he is, what stops him from approaching me or you as the judge to say, can we discuss the policy around this business? This is a big multinational. We would like to understand how this case is going to be handled against that person.
Fair enough, point made. Duko, because we must wind up, gentlemen, we're completely out of time. Let me come back to you, because you said that it is the way in which first government has been structured that facilitates corruption. If you were to look at structure and fix it from there, very briefly, what needs to be done?
I'll give an example. In countries where corruption rates are low, you find a characteristic of a strong value-based enforcement system. We don't have that in Kenya. Design problem, the way the police service was designed since independence, it was to serve whoever is in power. And that's why it's not accidental that when you look at the body language of Inspector General Boynet or Muhoro Ndegwa, it's not a demeanor that tells you that this is someone who can go and arrest a cabinet secretary if it called for that.
How do you fix that? How do you fix that?
The issue is, if we were to reform policing, for example, and we've been on the rhetoric of police reforms for a long time, but we are not seeing any movement. We live in this country. People working in the services happen to be our friends or our relatives even. But you hear stories where, depending on who is a suspect in a corruption case, there are calls that come, including from the presidency, to go slow on cases. And so you find a police service whose design is so anti-people and pro-people to an extent that they operate as a militia of the executive rather than a service of the public. So if we were to make movement, we really have to elevate policing in this country, and that starts from how we conceptualize policing and law enforcement, how we recruit officers, how we train officers, the philosophy behind policing, that extricates law enforcement from the control of who was the person who was control. And Prof, I mentioned that in this country, we've been taken on a road that every problem that emerges, throw money at it. And that's what the president was saying. You don't throw money.
Fixing things isn't about necessarily giving more money.
It's not about throwing money. It's about what kind of country you want to build. And he has confirmed in his act of abdication that the kind of country that he is interested in maintaining is one where you tell citizens that you wrongfully elected me, I'm not able to do the job, and he falls short of basically saying, from an integrity perspective, nimeshindwa.
So if a police force says the reason why we're not able to investigate crime properly, etc., is because we do not have our forensic labs are not stocked correctly, etc., we don't have enough boots on the ground, etc. How do you fix that?
I will stop you there to tell you something important. I will tell you something important. I know you're asking him an important question.
So let me do that, Harun, and then I'll come to you.
Okay.
That might be an issue, but it's not the whole. Is not the whole issue. Because, for example, to hold a relative of a powerful office like the presidency to account for economic crimes, you don't need a forensic lab. You don't need boots. You need an infrastructure where, in the person of the presidency, is an inspirational figure that says, even if it was my son who was culpable, there is the law. Even if it was my uncle who was responsible, there is the law. That level of integrity, we don't see it. And we see the presidency taking us on a trail of playing about serious stuff. They play with citizens, security starts with you, now corruption starts with you, to abdicate responsibility. It's unacceptable.
Let me say what I want to say before.
Please go ahead.
There are two quick things I wanted to say about this. Yes. You saw at one time when the retired commission IG Kimayo was ordered to arrest the then secretary of the TSC. He actually said that he wasn't going to arrest him because that secretary was too powerful.
He said it would be embarrassing.
He said it would be embarrassing. Two, if you read the newspapers today, the vice president of some country in West Africa, Theodore Ngwema, somebody, they have made an application before the ICJ in Geneva, the International Court of Justice, to ask that court stops a French court from investigating crime. That is the behavior of African governments. The point I'm making is that the president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, and his government have not shown commitment of any kind other than words, speaking words which anybody can speak. There is no commitment that has been shown that they are actually fighting corruption systemically. So that the idea of this helplessness is showing, I don't know whether it was motivated by any other factor other than to lay the blame on the new Chief Justice, so that when the new Chief Justice doesn't jail people, if you call him that, the judiciary, then they can say, in 2017 as we go to election, they say, these people, we told you, the courts are the problem. Because that's what they've been saying, that he complained that it's the courts who are releasing people on bail. Let me say this with, as I conclude this remark, that the judiciary, an independent and impartial judiciary, is an ultimate important cog and balance in an effective and functional democracy. So if you are going to have a judiciary that is going to be doing what the executive wants, that is how, like in 2007, a country descends to where Kenya descended, because people lacked faith in that judiciary. So the president, independence is key, and the perception of that independence is key. And the president was inviting the judiciary through the Chief Justice to join the executive, so that we go back to where we were before 2007, so that anything that can happen, even if we went down, now we can blame the judiciary once more.
Prof, your final remarks, very briefly.
Remarks is this. Just building on what he said, first, if you see people who couldn't afford a bicycle in 2013, and now they are driving huge vehicles because they entered politics, or they are close to those who are close to power, You know, Anne, you don't need a forensic laboratory. You simply need to call. Even the president has his own MCS from his home area in Gatundu. He should just call them. How did you start driving this car?
Where did you get the
Where
money
did you
for
get
that?
the money? This is the most fundamental thing we ask of the president, including his own ministers. If they change, he will see it. He appointed them, but he has not done that. Now, the problem that I want to highlight as I end is that towards in the long run, everybody is going to ask Kenyans, why do you vote in some people and not others? Maybe it is an issue now that we need to interrogate as we go towards the elections. The president himself has told you, I cannot vote for you, I cannot fight corruption. So the Kenyan people should be asking themselves, why should we vote for him? If we were issue-oriented, like other democracies,
then this would disqualify
then Jubilee would not win the election, and somebody else will have to yes. But then the Republic is partly responsible for this kind of thing. We vote in people for wrong reasons, and even when they admit they can't do the job, we are likely to still vote them in. Why? What
a punchline. I must end it there. Oh, if we had an hour. Harun, thank you so very much. Really appreciate having you all on the program. We're taking a short break. We're back with business and, of course, the sport after this.